What's up, everybody? Couch Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Overwatch video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down patch 1.0, the first patch notes of Overwatch 2. We're going to do a deep dive into all the heroes and talk about their damage numbers, specific combos, and more. So you're going to want to watch until the end, but go to the GameLeap website right now for in-depth tips, tricks, guides over Overwatch. And we're going to be doing a complete rehaul for Overwatch 2. So if you want to leg up on your competition already, do yourself a favor and go check it out right now down below. Now, some of you have already gotten in the beta, but if you haven't, remember, 4 hours is the guaranteed amount of hours you can watch a dropped stream to get into the beta. So just as a PSA, you should be able to get into it tomorrow if you go and just tune into a stream for up to 4 hours, but it should be quite a bit less than that. Now, let's actually jump into specifically the characters because that's what we're most interested in. Let's talk about the role passives first. Tanks get 30% knockback resistance, 30% lower ultimate generation from damage taken, and healing done. This means less overall ultimates. Only one tank to farm, and that one tank only gets you 70% towards your ultimate rather than 100% like the other characters. So that's going to be important when we talk about some character ultimates later on. Next up, damage dealers have a 10% faster movement speed. Supports regenerate 15 health per second after 1 second without being damaged. That is actually very relevant, and we'll talk about that more in the support section. Now, temporary shields and armor health pools have been combined into overhealth, no special attribute. Overhealth no longer provides ultimate charge when damaged, so that's even less ultimates that are being generated. Based armor health pools reduce incoming damage by 30%. Base armor no longer mitigates damage by the previous flat amount of -5 per hit. So there's not going to be some weird calculation involving pellet-based fire, like a tracer or a soldier, versus a single shot burst of damage. It doesn't matter. It's a reduction of 30%. In general, phase effects will no longer allow you to clear Zarya's Graviton Surge or Sigma's Gravitic Flux, so you can still use something like Reaper's form, his Wraith form, and while you're not going to take any damage in the Graviton Surge, you still won't be able to leave it. So let's jump into the actual character statistics. First off, with Doomfist is in the tank role, and he's actually really freaking well designed and awesome, guys. We'll talk about him more in our tier list. But his base health got increased from 250 to 450. No more uppercut. Now has the hand cannon damage reduced from 6 to 5 per pellet. But the ammo regeneration rate increased from once every 0.65 seconds to 0.4 seconds. Next up, Rocket Punch impact damage range reduced from 50 to 100 to 15 to 30. Wall Slam damage range reduced from 50 to 150 to 20 to 40. So a lot less damage with the punch and a lot less damage with the Wall Slam. Maximum charge up time reduced from 1.4 to 1 second, so you charge up faster. Impacting a target now causes a secondary larger cone area check to grab extra targets to potentially knock them back as well, meaning that you can actually punch multiple enemies. That's really, really important. This allows a Doomfist to go in and punch enemies, and while it's not doing a ton of damage, it is CCing them, and it's booping them back, thus creating space for his team and allowing his teammates to follow up. So Doomfist isn't that threat that is just going to one-shot you by himself, but he is going to create that initial engagement for his team, and that's what makes him actually a really good tank in the tanking role. Power Block, new ability, enter a blocking stance, reducing damage taken from the front by 90%. Blocking at least 100 damage causes Doomfist Gauntlet to become supercharged, empowering the next Rocket Punch in the following ways. Increases the damage by 50%, travels 50% faster and further. The area of effect blast that knocks back additional targets is twice as large. Targeting impact, a wall will be stunned for an additional 0.5 to 1 seconds depending on charge amount. Basically, do not freaking make this Doomfist supercharged if he uses his power block, and if he does, you need to get the fuck away as fast as possible because he's like Super Doom, okay? Just for one punch, but that's all you need. Next up is Seismic Slam. Move from ability 2 to ability 1. Now launches Doomfist in the air in the direction the player is aiming. You can launch yourself pretty high up vertically or out, and creates a wide arc shockwave upon landing, dealing 50 damage and slowing enemy movement speed by 30%. No longer has different behavior between being activated in the air or on the ground. No longer pulls in enemies. Can be canceled by pressing the ability key again. Then last up is Meteor Strike. Damage range reduced from 15 to 200 to 15 to 100, so a lot less range. Impact damage at the center, 1 meter radius unchanged from 300 damage. So smaller range, but if you get someone right in the center, it's still gonna do that 300 chunk of damage. So you can still combo with this with something like a Graviton. Knockback removed, so it doesn't knock back anybody anymore. Now additionally slows the movement of enemies hit by 50% for 2 seconds. Cast time reduced from 1 to 0.5 seconds. So it's going to cast a little faster. It might be easier for you to actually get people inside of it. And potentially, you could even combo with this with something like Sword Jordan's little suck vortex ability. Next up is Diva. Base health increased from 300 to 450. Base armor reduced from 300 to 200. Fusion cannons, primary fire movement penalty reduced from 500 to 400. Weapon spread reduced from 4 to 3.5. Diva is very, very freaking strong this patch. We'll talk about her more in the tier list because even though she's hardly changed, she works perfectly in 5v5. Next up is Orisa, and Orisa is freaking insane, okay? So first off, her base armor got increased from 200 to 250. Base health got increased from 200 to 250. The augmented fusion driver, new primary fire, now rapidly fires 10 plasma projectiles per second. Projectiles start off large and shrink as they travel. Damage starts at 10.5 and scales down to 4 damage over 35 meters. Uses a heat mechanic instead of ammo. Firing the weapon increases heat and it cools down while not firing. If the weapon overheats, a forced release of heat prevents the weapon from being fired for 3 seconds. The Energy Javelin. This is a really cool ability. It's the secondary fire. Orisa will throw a spear, impacting the first enemy in its path, dealing 80 damage, stuns the enemy for 0.2 seconds, and knocks them back 6 meters. If the enemy collides with the wall while being knocked back, they take 40 more damage and are stunned an additional 0.3 seconds. This is an insane peel tool. It allows you to combo weak enemies and just kill them. It allows you to help an ally that is being dove. It's really, really awesome, and it adds a lot of skill-based intricacy to Orisa, makes her not play herself, and I think insane Orisas are going to have such a high skill ceiling, specifically around the Energy Javelin. Next up is Fortify. Orisa slows her movement by 20. It's going to provide an extra 125 health, reduces heat generation from Orisa's weapon by 50%, and duration got increased from 4 to 4.5. Now, this is another ability that was added, the Javelin Spin. Orisa spins rapidly with the spear for 1.75 seconds, destroying incoming projectiles, increases forward movement speed by 60% while active, and by 20% for 2 seconds after the spinning ends. Rapidly damages enemies in her path, dealing up to 90 damage, and constantly knocking them back, okay? So let me give you an example of something that happened to me while I've been playing, and I have randomly queued into a pro player EQO, and he fucking comboed me with this. He hit me with an Energy Javelin, it slammed me and then into the wall, so that's 80 damage plus 40 more damage, and I get knocked back into the wall and stunned, and then he Javelin spun me for the 90 damage, constantly knocking me back. That just finished me off. That's freaking, 120 plus 90. So you're doing 210 damage. And he basically just completely fucked me, like, as Orisa. Just rolled me. And yeah, it's pretty fucking strong. It's really, really good. Now last up is Terra Surge. New ultimate ability. Orisa will pull in nearby enemies and become fortified. Charge up an area of effect attack over 4 seconds. Releasing the charge deals up to 225 damage based on how long it was channeled. While charging, deals minor damage over time and slows nearby enemies' movement speed by 30%. Really cool AoE ability, and I think it works well if enemies are trying to all jump onto Orisa and really swarm around her. This is a great ultimate that can be used well if enemies overextend into her. Next up, we have Reinhardt. Base armor increased from 200 to 300. Base health increased from 300 to 350. Steadfast removed and replaced by the tank passive. Barrier field, health reduced from 1600 to 1200. Regeneration rate reduced from 200 to 144 health per second. Charge steering turn rate increased by 50%. This one is surprisingly very strong, and you're gonna think that you're out of his freaking path, and he's gonna veer that bitch all the way into you. So definitely keep that in mind. Reinhardts can really turn. They're Tokyo drifting out here. Can now be manually canceled as well. So if a charge goes really bad, you can just cancel it, or you can like bait a charge. I think there's gonna be some cool stuff you know, beta charge, shatter, or something like that. Like, you could do some crazy mix-ups with the fact you can cancel it. Charge pin wall impact damage reduced from 300 to 225. Cooldown from 10 to 8 seconds. So more charges, you can cancel them. They're easier to steer. It does less damage, but it doesn't matter. Next up is Fire Strike. Now has 2 ability charges, so you could use it twice, and damage reduced from 100 to 90. So you're not going to be able to one-tap people through Amplification Matrix anymore. Next up is Roadhog. Base health increase from 600 to 700. Total healing increase from 300 to 350. Sigma base shields increase from 100 to 200. Accretion damage increase from 70 to 100. Experimental barrier regeneration rate reduced from 120 to 100. Winston base armor increase from 150 to 200. Tesla cannon new secondary fire. Hold secondary fire to charge, releasing a 30-meter range jolt of electricity. Deals up to 50 damage and costs 20 ammo. So this could be a way to just finish someone off or even poke. Barrier protector health increased from 650 to 800. Barrier projector duration reduced from 9 to 8. Cooldown reduced from 13 to 12. Primal Rage ultimate cost increased by 10%. Wrecking Ball base armor increased from 100 to 150. Base health increased from 500 to 550. Adaptive shields radius increased from 8 to 10. Health gain per target increased from 75 to 100 health. Next up is Zarya. Base health increased from 200 to 250. Base shield increased from 200 to 250. Particle Barrier now has 10-second cooldown on a shared 2-charge system with projected barrier. Cooldown now begins immediately on ability use instead of when the barrier has expired. Barrier duration increased from 2 to 2.5 seconds. Projected Barrier now has 10-second cooldown on a shared 2-charge system with Particle Barrier. Cooldown now begins immediately on ability use instead of when the barrier has expired. Barrier's duration increased from 2 to 2.5 seconds. Barrier targets cannot be targeted again by the ability for 2 seconds. Energy degeneration increased from 1.8 to 2.2 per second. Next up is Ashe. Bob base health reduced from 1200 to 1000. Bastion self-repair ability removed and replaced by A36 tactical grenade. Ability removed and replaced with configuration artillery for the ultimate. Ironclad passive ability removed. Configuration recon. Weapon damage increased from 20 to 25. Fire rate reduced from 8 to 5 per shot. Weapon spread removed. Ammo reduced from 35 to 25. Configuration Assault, which is renamed from Sentry. Bastion is now able to move in this form at 35 reduced movement speed. Now has 6-second duration and 12-second cooldown. Now has infinite ammo for its duration. Weapon spread is now constant 2 degrees and no longer becomes more accurate as you fire. Damage reduced from 15 to 12. Tactical Grenade. This ability replaces self-repair, but is bound to alternate fire instead of E by default. New Secondary Fire. Launches a grenade that can bounce off walls but sticks to players or the ground. It explodes after a short delay, dealing up to 130 damage. The cool thing about this is actually that you can bounce yourself over very high surfaces. If you throw this down, you know, you turn into your assault form, you could bounce yourself way over the top of roofs and just surprise freaking Gatling gun people. His ultimate Artillery. The targeting works similar to Doomfist's Meteor Strike ultimate, but you can click 3 times to launch projectiles. Locks Bastion in place to fire up to 3 long-range artillery shells. These shells deal high damage in large area, but the damage falloff is significant. The projectiles come straight down from the air at the targeted locations, but they are projectiles in every other sense and can be blocked or destroyed by abilities. So this is something that can be comboed with a lot, but you gotta be careful when you activate it because, of course, the Tracers, the Genjis, everyone and their mother is coming for you. Next up, we have Cassidy. Now, his flashbang got completely removed and replaced by the magnetic grenade. We'll get to that in a second. Now, the Fan the Hammer fire rate got increased by about 2.5%. I don't know why they say around. I guess they did some weird math on that. Magnetic grenade throws a grenade that can stick to enemies, automatically hones it on an enemy close to the reticle when thrown within 10 meters of the target, and can chase up to 13 meters. You actually have to be pretty close to them. It's not something that aims itself. Like, I know it kind of does, but you're not going to lock onto anybody unless you're pretty close to right on them. Deals 131 damage split between 1 impact, 65 explosive damage, and an additional 65 damage to the stuck target at the time of detonation. So remember, Cassidy's primary fire does 70 damage if you're close enough. It has a fall off, but if you're doing that full 70 damage and you hit someone with the magnetic grenade for 131 damage, you're going to be doing 201 damage, which is going to be able to kill people straight up with the grenade plus just one body shot, which is crazy. And even if you're from the further array, like the farthest distance, which is only going to do that 40 damage with your primary weapon, if you hit the magnetic grenade like on a Tracer, for instance, you're still going to be able to kill them. So even though it's not a flashbang, it actually is very powerful at certain things, but Cassidy doesn't play the same role that he has before. He's a very, very different character. You don't have problems with, characters like Tracers or characters like Wrecking Balls or even Doomfist and think necessarily to whip out Cassidy because he doesn't have the means to just stop them with that stun. Even though the magnetic grenade can output damage, other characters can too. Hanzo can headshot, Ashe can headshot insta-kill. There's a lot of other characters that have the capability to do that. And I'm not saying Cassidy's bad. I'm saying that he is not the go-to counter for some of these characters. In fact, I would say that Cassidy is not that great against characters like Wrecking Ball and even characters like Tracer. So keep that in mind. Next up is Deadeye. Now grants 40% damage reduction while channeling the ultimate. Damage now builds at 130 damage per second for the first 2 seconds, and then at 260 damage per second the remaining duration. Maximum duration increased from 6 to 7 seconds. Ultimate cost increased by 10%. Now, that damage reduction is sweet. It makes it so you can survive. You could do some crazy shit and actually survive. If people don't instantly kill you or stun you or whatever, you're going to be able to get off a lot more ultimates. Next up is Echo. Maximum damage per second reduced from 200 to 175. Echo copies the target combined health value, including health, armor, and shields, up to a total of 30 health. A duplicated Tracer will have 150 health, and a Reinhardt will have 300 health. Hanzo, Storm Arrow damage reduced from 70 to 65. Junkrat, Steel Trap no longer prevents all movement for its target, now slows its target by 65% until they reach the max chain length, then it breaks. Still prevents movement abilities from being activated. Damage increased from 80 to 100. Projectile speed increased from 10 to 17. Kind of strange on Junkrat. Now Mei, Endothermic Blaster, freeze stun removed, immediately slows targets by constant 50% instead of building up over time. Slow duration reduced from 1 to 0.5. Damage per second increased from 55 to 100. Ammo increased from 120 to 150. Cryo Freeze no longer removes Sigma Gravitic Flux effect. Ice Wall Pillar health reduced from 400 to 250. Range reduced from 35 to 20. Blizzard ultimate cost increased by 15%. Reaper Hellfire Shotguns damage per pellet reduced from 6 to 5.4. Spread increased from 6 to 8. Now, I'm not going to talk about Sojourn because we had a video going in depth about her and all of her abilities. Next up is Sombra. Machine Pistol, damage reduced from 8 to 7, spread reduced by 10%. Hack cooldown reduced from 8 to 4 seconds. Cooldown is no longer reduced when hacking health packs. Cast time increased by 0.65 to 0.85. Health pack hack duration reduced from 60 to 30 seconds. Ability lock duration reduced from 5 to 1 second. So you're not actually locking abilities for very long when they are hacked. That's very, very important, okay? And of course, your health packs aren't going to be hacked for as long. Revealed hacks enemies through the walls to Sombra's team for 8 seconds. That's important. Interrupting hack during the channel time now incurs the full cooldown, so Sombras are more punished for getting their hack canceled. Stun duration on Bob reduced from 5 to 2 seconds. Now destroys Baptiste's immortality field when it is hacked. Cool. Fade in time reduced by 50%. Enemy detection radius increased from 2 to 4 meters. Can now use hack during stealth without ending the stealth ability, but it's revealed to enemies when hacking and for 0.75 seconds after hacking. It's freaking ridiculous. This character can hack while she's invis. It's nuts, and yeah, it's very, very strong. Opportunist. Damage dealt to hack targets is now increased by 40%. EMP, in addition to hacking them, now also deals 40% of current health as damage to enemies. No longer deals additional damage to base shield health pools. EMP still deals massive damage to barriers. Freaking nuts, guys. We're going to be talking about Sombra in the tier list. She is absolutely ridiculous, okay? But yeah. Next up is Tracer. Pulse pistol damage reduced from 6 to 5. This was really necessary. Tracer is ridiculously strong. Widowmaker, base health increased from 175 to 200, okay? Support Ana cooldown increased from 12 to 15 seconds on that sleep dart, so You can't miss that shit. Baptiste Biotic Launcher primary fire minimum fall off range reduced from 25 to 20. Regenerative burst total healing increased from 75 to 100. Brig no longer stuns enemies. Cooldown reduced from 7 to 5. Distance traveled increased from 7 to 12 meters. So she's gonna fly really far. Movement is no longer stopped when impacting barriers, but the damage is increased from 1 to 50. So she does decent damage with her shield bash, and she can do it quite often, so it adds a bit of burst to the character. Inspire also triggers from the shield bash damage, so you're gonna start healing when you hit people with it. So yeah, you can go in a lot more. Lucio, shield barrier ultimate cost reduced by 12%. Mercy, regeneration, now increase the support passive healing by 50%. Now, I know this is a lot of information to take in at one time, but the important thing you need to understand are breakpoints. Look at the characters that you want to play and look at how much damage and breakpoints of a combination of abilities will kill certain HP levels. And of course, we're going to be doing in-depth guides over all the top characters and really help you kind of figure out exactly how to play based on the stats. So make sure you smash the like, subscribe, and go to the GameLeap website if you want to start dominating in Overwatch right away. We have in-depth tips, tricks, and so much more. So do yourself a favor and go check it out right now down below.